Nano Machine. Bai, Anhongweolja. Chapter 361. Incarnation of Qilin. Part 1. The hall of the last level of the Guardian base was divided into 3 paths. Unlike Chen Yoan, who went straight down, Hubong came through a different path. Turning right at every fork, one could find the prison cell of the Imperial Palace's Guardian. In that place, there were 2 bodies wearing only underwear, and their bodies were so bruised that their families won't even recognize them. Damn it. Hubong couldn't help but curse out loud after witnessing such a sight. These bodies, which only had their underwear on, weren't just tortured. All of their fingernails and toenails were plucked out, and he could see that they suffered from beating from an iron rod. Imperial Palace? Bullshit. Hubong couldn't stop swearing as he kept looking at the bodies. They were none other than the members of the demonic cult. The moment they got caught by the court maids, it seemed like they were tortured severely and died from it. Sigh. I should stop swearing, said a wounded man, who was collecting sticks to burn the corpses. He was the only surviving member of the captured demonic cult infiltrators. From the moment he got tortured, he could be called one hell of a lucky guy. Hubong, who held a torch in his hand, hesitated. We can't even take them back to our place. To burn the dead bodies to get rid of their existence hurt Hubong. Seeing him sad, the other man asked him to hand over the torch. Alright, I'll do it. The man's face was a mess. It was full of bruises and dried blood, his eyes were swollen, yet full of determination. As Hubong handed him the torch without hesitation, the bruised man lit pieces of cloth and the broken branches around the corpses. Crackle. The oil from the lamp poured and instantly caught fire. Watching the flames soar high, the only surviving member spoke. I was prepared to make sacrifices for our cult because I was given the role of a spy. During an assignment, never show any signs of mourning for any brothers. Who is mourning here? Huh? Hubong didn't say anything. These masters, who were tasked with the duties of spies as the demonic cult, didn't have family or close relatives, as they mainly tasked themselves as spies, assassins, and intelligence gatherers. They were like shadows, living only for the demonic cult, and yet, they picked up the current mission. They knew they were going to work with the lord of the demonic cult, who personally changed the plan to rescue the captured spies, and in a way, their death wasn't in vain. It has been a while since I saw the Lord get angry. Chen Yoan wasn't the kind of person who showed anger, and ever since he became the Lord of Demonic Cult, he did his best to hold back his anger. However, after discovering the bodies of his men were tortured in the prison cells, his eyes immediately hungered for killing. He went in alone, but I'm not sure if he would be fine. Watching the bodies burn, Hubong was worried for his lord. Chen Yoan left Hubong and the Master of Spies to take care of the corpses and headed down to the underground. Hubong believed that his master was invincible, but he wasn't sure of how the enemy and world would treat him. I need to hurry up and head over to Lord. Bang! Grrrrrrr. It was at that moment vibrations appeared as if the underground was experiencing an earthquake. It wasn't strong enough to collapse, but the trembling of the walls could be made out by the naked eyes. What the hell? It wasn't just vibration. It was some kind of energy. An extraordinary energy soared all through the place. Hubong, who was worried, said to the Master of Spies, "Please take care of this, I will head over to where the Lord is, I understand. Please go ahead." Hubong quickly began to run out of the prison cells. The last, 7th level with hidden treasure. To enter that place, one would have to pass through the maze, which was equipped with energy engines. The option of bursting through the ceiling wouldn't work, as the maze was designed to self-destruct if anyone tried to intrude forcibly. Numerous traps were waiting for the intruders, but for the Blood Master, it was a simple waste of time. You must be kidding me. Spask. The spearheads popping from the floor below were easily blocked by her attack, and the arrows, coming in from the sidewalls, were too slow compared to her movements. There was no need for the Blood Master to work because the man, who assisted her by destroying all the traps in the maze, did all the job. And as a result, they reached the end of the maze in not much time. The exit. As they moved, there was a barrier placed in the way, and an exit right underneath it. But at the exit, a bright light, like a torch, flickered. As they passed through the exit, a space about half the size of the 6th level hall appeared in front of their eyes. Ah! The man assisting her exclaimed at the scene. Hiss! As soon as they crossed through the exit sign, they were greeted by a heat wave. The end of the hall had a large pond, which occupied 1/3 of the hall. What was really interesting is that a rock was protruding like a small island in the middle of the pond, and this rock had a huge flame burning on it. Crackle! Crackle! Due to the enormous flame, steam was rising around, like a hot spring in the pond. And thanks to that, the hall's temperature was hot, while the air was humid and white because of vapor. What a truly a mysterious place. Despite being deep in the underground, it made them feel like they were in a land of lava. In the middle of the pond, the strange fire which was distracting them, further divided their concentration when a voice was resounded. Who dared to set their dirty foot in here? The voice could be heard, yet it was hard to grasp where the voice was coming from. The unknown energy from the huge flames in the middle of the pond suddenly started increasing, making the hall's temperature rise up. Unlike the man, who was looking for the voice, the Blood Master's eyes were directed toward the huge flame. Are you the last watchman? Who are you? The man was puzzled at the Blood Master's words. He couldn't tell if the opponent was a man or woman because their voice was strong. Then, the voice resounded again. You cheeky bastard. Your confidence has swelled enough that you are aiming for the treasure of the Imperial Palace. The voice is sharper than before. It was a voice that was being sarcastic towards the intruders. Without backing down, Blood Master suddenly opened her mouth and screamed. How long are you planning on hiding there and talking? Show yourself. I am not afraid of you. Huh? Did you hide because you are ugly to look at? She was deliberately provoking the other person. Was it a fight of chi between them? Would this provocation work? What? When the man was trying to think of what was going on, he saw a black figure of a human move behind the flames. He wasn't sure, but it seemed like the watchman of the treasure really fell into the provocation. Hiss. How did that person even get into the fire which seemed like it could burn everything? Just then, the black human being, behind the enormous flame began to slowly cross over and walk forward. No way. As shocking as it was, the black figure also had flames around. As if not affected by the heat, the figure crossed it and walked forward. Whoosh! The body, which was covered by the flames, was none other than the incarnation of the flames itself. Among the guardian warriors who were guarding the shrine, the two intruders had witnessed guards who could handle flames, but they were incomparable to the figure in front of them. It isn't that the body is burning, but the body itself is made of flames. It was an unbelievable sight for humans to accept. The assistant of Blood Monster went stiff. As they kept crossing the maze, he began to turn wary about the absence of the guardians, but now they were facing someone who was made of flames. Is it even giving out human energy? The energy from the flame body was violent and aggressive. Unlike him, who was nervous and scared, the eyes of Blood Monster were ready for battle. Until then, she had no interest in battling it out, but now she was making such an interesting expression. I knew that there would be a person protecting this place, so that was you, huh? As she asked, the one in flames didn't bother answering back. Rather, the flames surrounding the body gradually subsided, revealing the appearance. SHHHH. They assumed that the entire body would be black and scorched because of the flame, but a monster with red scales appeared. Huh? The entire body seemed to be covered with scales, yet she was naked without a single piece of cloth. She was the owner of a perfect body with a swelling chest and narrow waist. As the woman in scales extended her right hand, something like a piece of cloth from a corner in the hall came over and wrapped her body. Shh! The red scales covering the whole body disappeared as the cloth began to cover her from the chest to thighs. She was, no doubt, an alluring and beautiful woman with flames running around her waist. Just looking at her face would seduce any living man. She is so seductive. Since it was just a small piece of cloth, most of her body was exposed. Thanks to that, the man was embarrassed to directly look at her. The seductive woman caught him glancing at her and looked at Blood Master with a glare as she spoke. I thought that you were so special, but there's nothing special about you. The lady in flames, who seemed to be conscious of being called ugly, spoke back to Blood Master. If evaluated objectively, the woman in flames could be counted as the best in the Empire. On the contrary, Blood Master raised her eyebrows, as if she didn't like hearing those words. Ah. You are cheeky as the keeper of a tomb. Keeper of the tomb? I, a woman, have been guarding the Imperial treasure for a long time because of the agreement we made with the first Emperor of the Empire. A thief like you has no right making fun of me. First Emperor? The man's eyes widened when he heard of the agreement with the first Emperor. He knew that something was unusual by looking at her, but listening to the woman's words, it meant that she lived for over 200 years. The eyes of Blood Master, who was displeased till a moment back, were now sparkling. Did you take in the blood of Qilin to get immortality? Immortality? There was a limit to the life of a person who even reached the highest level of martial arts. But, not a single person was alive for such a long time. However, the fact that this woman in flames lived for nearly 200 years in her young form had to mean that she had achieved immortality. Your eyes are full of greed. You are only fools. The woman in flames caught the Bloodmaster's eyes, which were shining in greed. Those who came in for the treasure had to be killed. Guardian Ranyang. According to the agreement, I will aim for the thieves who have infiltrated the treasure. Wuong. Sparks began to rise from her arms, the woman who identified herself as second. Guardian Ranyang. It was as if she wanted to burn down all the enemies in front of her. What a tremendous amount of energy. The flames were so intense that even a few skilled masters wouldn't be able to stand the energy she was revealing. Bloodmaster spoke to the man who was shocked. Stay back. I will deal with her. Ye. Swoosh. Even before he could finish his words, something like a hazy afterimage shook before him. The one who appeared with the air swaying around them like a mirage was none other than Ranyang. She was so fast that even the man didn't realize that she was standing right beside him. What, stand back? I'll deal with the both of you. Wing. Sparks shone brightly from her hands. The man, who was terrified of the flames which were soaring her hand, pulled out his sword. Swoosh. The sword, made of steel, created a form of a dense mesh, trying to block the fire. The man urgently took a defensive position, thinking that he would be able to stop the attack from reaching him. But, Wing. What is this? The flame engulfed him in an instant, and the strong raging heat invaded his hand which was holding the sword. He only wanted to protect himself, but the heat was so terrifying that it felt like his hand was gone. Chike. Quack. The man retrieved the sword and tried to retreat a couple of steps, but the flames moved in the gap and struck him. Wing. Damn it. He let go of the sword he was holding because of the fire which struck him, but the flames already entwined his body. In an instant, the flames, which touched him, began to burn the body. Ag. Starting from his arms, the fire continued to his upper body and the man rolled on the floor while groaning in pain. Bloodmaster, on the other hand, who was attacked at the same time, had a different expression. Was the best defense known to be the best attack? When the flames were about to cover Bloodmaster, she didn't back down, but went ahead and stepped ahead to cut the throat of Ranyang. Thud. She's fast. Ranyang, who tried to avoid it by leaning behind, had to stop the attack and jump back to avoid getting hit. Would that cause damage? The eyes of Bloodmaster caught something. Certainly, she wanted to kill Ranyang in just one strike, but she avoided it. She saw how accurately Ranyang deflected the attack. You aren't so normal, Bloodmaster said to Ranyang, who had been taken 10 steps away. Ranyang replied casually. Oh, you stopped my attack? You need to learn more to take me down. Ranyang too made the decision to kill them by burning them, but she never expected that one of the intruders would escape her attack. It has been so long since I met this kind of person. Ranyang was called the true hidden power of the Imperial Palace. As long as she lived, no one would be able to break into the Guardian Hall. The eyes of Ranyang were devoted to the battle and started shining in excitement. I was almost disappointed because of the Great Guardian and the others in the Imperial Palace, but this is fun. Guh. The two women were feeling excited about their confrontation with each other. The man, who was assisting Bloodmaster, barely managed to extinguish the flames, which were burning his body. Kiek. Hot vapor flowed from his body. He was hoping to retreat to avoid getting in between the confrontation of the two crazy women. These two are really monsters. He would always wonder if there was another woman who could fight on the same level as Bloodmaster, but for her to be in the Imperial Palace. The monster's opponent was another monster. It was obvious that he would die if he intervened, so he decided to search for the treasure while the women were fighting. Who? I'll go to the side where the flames were struck and, grrrrrr. Something strange was sounding from the side of the ceiling. It was when the assistant started concentrating on the sound. Crack. Crack. The ceiling started cracking and the rocks began to fall. It was as if a thunderbolt struck the ceiling. Thud. 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 If he had no luck on his side, he would have definitely died a terrible death. Even with the rocks crumbling, he wasn't severely hurt, but his leg got caught between a rock. The two women, who were confronting each other, turned their gaze towards the abruptly collapsed ceiling. Assistant. The scream was from Bloodmaster, who wanted to know if her aide was alive. However, due to his leg under a rock and the pain he was experiencing, he fainted. And one could see an outline of someone standing over the fallen rocks. Who is he? A guard? Both the women looked at him. The one who came down from the broken ceiling was a young man with a white face and gold robe. That's right, it was Chen Yoan. Just like how he passed the other levels, he broke through the hall and descended the last level. Looking at the two women who were glaring at him, Chen Yoan opened his mouth and said, "Thank God I wasn't too late." Chapter 362. Incarnation of Qilin. Part 2. You stupid guy. Why did you die on me? It wasn't like the assistant of Bloodmaster fell after fighting for a prolonged time, but he died because of the collapsed ceiling. Even calling for him seemed frustrating. For a moment, everyone was shocked at the sudden collapse of the ceiling, and the eyes of Bloodmaster narrowed. He is not normal at all. With her keen and reinforced instincts, she was sure that the man in front of them wasn't an ordinary one. He was perfectly holding on to his energy without releasing it, which meant that he must be someone with great power levels that went beyond her imagination. I thought this would be easy, but was I right? She thought that the problem would be solved once she got rid of Ranyang, whom she was fighting with, but that clearly didn't seem to be the case. Seeing that he had a golden armor on him, he was definitely a member of the Imperial Palace. The fact that he appeared right from the ceiling. In the other levels above this, there were people of Blade God's 6 martial clan who were leaving the marks of demonic cult martial arts on the corpses. Bloodmaster stared at the Guardian, Ranyang, and Chen Yoan alternatively. She was confident in her skills, but she knew that she'd be at a disadvantage if they both joined forces. Then, on the other hand, it wasn't just Bloodmaster who was awestruck at the sudden appearance of Chen Yoan from the ceiling. The Guardian, Ranyang, was also wary of his actions and appearance. The man was wearing gold armor, but not once had she ever heard about such a skilled man in the guards. I don't think that even the Guardians are this capable. She was convinced that the man in front of her was a lot stronger than the guard, who is right next to the Emperor. Moreover, although the man wasn't releasing any energy, she could feel that he had a scary and dangerous energy around him. This is no normal underground, and he appears through the ceiling. Meaning, these two must be allies. Ranyang stared at Bloodmaster. She thought that it was worth playing with her since it had been a long time since she crossed swords with others, but there was no way that someone trying to seize the treasure would play fair. Even if she was skilled, it would be quite troublesome if the two of them joined hands and attacked her at the same time. It would be dangerous if they joined hands. Then, right now, the situation was truly complicated. With the appearance of Chen Yoan, the two women made the same decision. With eyes on full alert, the both of them looked at each other and then at Chen Yoan, and attacked him at the same time as if they had already made the decision beforehand. Fat. It was Chen Yoan that the two women were aiming at. In order to prevent him from joining hands with either side, they decided to take down the newly emerged man. Weeing. SHHHHH. Are they together? Chen Yoan didn't expect such a development. It was as if the beasts were trying to get rid of any possible enemies before they resumed their fight. Thus, from the right side, an attack of hot flames similar to Qilin was released, and on the left was the extreme art of Blade God. Huh? What? The two women's eyes found each other at the same time. They thought they attacked an opponent. They thought that the guard was an ally to the other, but what is the new twist? However, they realized that they both were mistaken. This is not a good start. Chen Yoan's eyes turned serious. To avoid any more changes in the battle, the two of them decided to attack him. Clang! When Chen Yoan stretched out his right hand to unfold White Dragon Blade, the blade on his back suddenly appeared in his right hand. But that wasn't the end. Clang! 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 When he stretched the left hand, the black irons which seemed to be protecting his wrist on both the arms disassembled, forming into a black sword, and formed in Chen Yoan's hand. An arm of a guard turned into a sword? Who the hell is he? They both knew from the start that Chen Yoan wasn't going to be an easy opponent. And their thoughts were true. Qilin. A cold chill ran down their spines, even though the temperature of the underground was increasing. Despite the strange phenomenon the guard displayed, the long spear wrapped in the flames of Ranyang, which was used to attack Chen Yoan, went to strike him. Cha! 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 At that moment, Chen Yoan, who unfolded White Dragon Blade, collided with Ranyang's spear. Cha! 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 What is this cold energy? Ranyang's eyes shook at the blade's movement. The skill Chen Yoan used would release cold energy, but it wasn't strong enough to prevent her flames, so she tried to find the loop and break his blade. And it wasn't just Ranyang who was shocked. When the art of Blade God was used, Bloodmaster wanted to slash Chen Yoan into 4 pieces, but the black sword in his hand moved so quickly and eloquently and prevented the attack. Clang! Clang! Clang. Clang. Did he just stop my attack without even moving? It was natural that she would be flustered. She wasn't sure how, but he managed to work with two swords together, and even prevent both incoming attacks without even getting a scratch on him? He blocked both the attacks simultaneously. But that wasn't it. He even managed to perform such a technique while using two different energies. He used both his hands to handle different energies. Although Bloodmaster has been learning martial arts for a very long time, it was her first time witnessing a person unfold two entirely different energies with two hands at the same time. What was even more shocking was that the energies were high-level ones. This guy is dangerous. He isn't on the same level as us. Although they were aiming to take down the shockingly appeared man, the women weren't stupid. When Chen Yoan managed to stop both their attacks, they decided to acknowledge that the man was dangerous for them to deal with. I need to take him down. CRRRK. Red scales began to form on Ranyang's body, who had begun to use flames to wrap her both arms. The places where the scales began to form soon released fire sparks, and in time she looked like she lit many fireworks on her body. Crackle. The heat she was releasing couldn't be compared to what she was releasing before. The white dragon blade, which was releasing cold energy, was turning red because of the heat. Qi. With the white dragon blade turning red because of the heat reached Chen Yoan's palm and turned the palm red. You, who deals with cold energy, can block this too? The 12 Hellfire. Guh. The 12 individual spheres of crackling fireworks rose around her, and then went towards the sky at the same moment, and exploded. It was a power that couldn't be compared to the flames she was using until a moment back. Bang, 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 bang. Now is the perfect time. Without missing the opportunity, Bloodmaster 2 began to release a new sword. It was the fifth form of the Blade God's 6 martial clans, the extreme art of Blade God. CRRRK. A sharp release of energy rose around as she used the sword from her waist. Gathering all the energy she could, she used extreme art of Blade God, which was a lot stronger than the attack on the Imperial Palace's guardians. There were 24 types of trajectories emerging from all over the place without covering up the fire sphere, which was causing explosions. SHHHHHH. The moment she shouted, the energy swords moved at once along with the exploding fire sphere. The fire of Ranyang blasting through the hall, so was the Bloodmaster's sword energies. Bang, 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 bang. As the explosion and the energy were aiming for the same spot of contact, a crack appeared on the floor because of the overflowing energy, and sparks flew in all directions. Such tremendous power. This much should be enough. Now, we need to create a gap. Fat. At the same time, both the women flew backwards to avoid getting caught up in the collision. The power of the two exquisite energies was beyond any imagination. It wasn't intended to be a mixed attack, but it seemed like a perfect combination of two supermasters. Swoosh. When the combined attack was used, the whole place was being damaged. The entire place was scorched in black soot because of the explosion which occurred, and many huge pits were created before all rocks and debris flew and scattered around. The point where the attack hit only released smoke. However, both the women didn't feel the need to check if the guard was alive or not. Facing such tremendous power, it would be difficult to even find the trace of the body. He must have turned into ash. Bloodmaster clicked her tongue. She looked at Ranyang, who was still looking at the point of impact. Who was he? There was no doubt that the guard belonged to the Imperial Palace. But, he seemed to have joined forces with someone else. Thanks to that, the situation was under control, but Ranyang couldn't figure out why he entered the hall. At that time, Ranyang asked her, "That man from earlier, is he one of yours?" At her question, Bloodmaster was confused. Bloodmaster couldn't hold back her question too and asked Ranyang, "What nonsense is that? Weren't you the bitch who brought him along?" What? After hearing each other's questions, both women were confused. They both came to the conclusion that he wasn't an ally for any of them. So, what was the identity of the guard? I should have asked before I killed him. Ranyang felt regret, but there was no way that she couldn't ask the dead, whose body was also gone. That was when Bloodmaster thought, "It is better for this to happen. He was a nuisance anyway, and now I need to deal with the flame bitch, who is still here." It wasn't an intended joint attack, but it was fortunate that the guard had been taken down. The Bloodmaster didn't have a lot of time on her hands and wanted to kill this woman before taking the blood of Qilin and escaping from the Imperial Palace. Blood Master spoke to Ranyang while taking aim. You are a lucky one. Now I only need to deal with you. Clicking her tongue, Ranyang spoke to the Blood Master, who seemed overconfident. That is funny. I would apply the same words to you. I had to do a joint attack with you since I knew that you could barely attack him. Weeing. Flames burned more around Ranyang's body. Saying those words, both of Ranyang's hands were raised and the flame sphere rose again. It was a similar technique she used on the guard. Hoo, do you think that it would work on me? Well, we'll see whether it works or not, Cree. Before they could even finish their words, they felt something eerie in their senses. The two women abruptly looked at the source of the energy. Hook. It was the place where the joint attack had fallen. The smoke was still rising due to the aftermath of the explosion, but now, a weird energy made them feel a chill run down their spine. What the hell is going on? No way. It was weird. In the aftermath of that tremendous energy, there was no way the man could survive. The attack was so powerful that it was questionable if even the 5 great masters of the Blade God's 6 martial clan could stop it. But, that's where they were wrong. Cha, 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 ugh. The floor began to turn cold, from the point of impact, where the large pit formed. The entire cavity, which should have been hot and smoking, started turning cold and began to turn into ice. However, the frost was black. The floor is cold and black. The both of them couldn't think of what to do facing this new and weird phenomenon and looked at the place from where the energy was coming from. Eventually the smoke went and someone appeared. And no way. He isn't dead. Shockingly, from the smoke, rather than turning into ashes, Chen Yoan stood tall. Of course, he wasn't completely fine. His armor was scorched because of the heat, and his face along with other parts of his body, which were guarded, were full of burn marks and cuts, but there was something else. What's happening to the wounds? Tsuu. The burn marks and cuts on Chen Yoan's body began to heal quickly. In an instant, they were visible no more, as if he wasn't wounded in the first place. What? He is? Such regeneration speed made Ranyang's expression harden. It looked much faster than her own regeneration speed, which was possible only after taking blood of Qilin. As she looked at him, Chen Yoan spoke. I didn't know that the two of you, the guardian of the Imperial Palace and the Blade God's 6 martial clan members, would join forces. Ugh, well, it doesn't matter. Now then, I will also do joint attacks from now on. What? Joint attacks? The two of them focused on the word joint attack. They couldn't feel another person apart from the guard and them. So, what could he mean? Nano, Chen Yoan called from Nano inside his mind. Let's go with augmented reality, Nano. Understood. Augment reality has been initiated for Master. CRRRRK. As the two women were looking around, white light particles began to form a line around them, creating augmented reality. As the augmented reality got initiated, Chen Yoan raised his right hand towards them and blue light began to merge in the air. Whining. And no way. Blood Master's eyes began to tremble as her predictions were coming true. The blue light which was forming in the air began to take the form of a sword, which was air sword. It was the air sword. Condensing strong energy in the air without any other medium and calling for a sword? Anyone who has reached the stage of performing such a technique and executing the air sword would normally need a medium. A step after that, if one reached for the next level, they could create the sword energy in the air without even a medium. Such people were called the Perfect Supreme Master in Qilin. Perfect Supreme Master? It was natural that Blood Master was astonished. In Qilin, the only ones who could deal with such a high technique were the 5 great masters. But that wasn't the end. Wuong. The blue-colored energy wasn't just condensing into one. Rather, 12 swords were forming around Chen Yoan. It makes no sense. Not one, but 12 swords. She was dumbfounded. She knew that he wasn't normal, but he was turning out to be a monster. Even Ranyang, who was covered in flames, was at a loss of words as she witnessed what was happening in front of her eyes. Who the hell is he? Chapter 363. Incarnation of Qilin. Part 3. 12 majestic air swords rose, all the while, the tips of the swords pointing at her. That was all it took to render Ranyang, who was considered the real hidden power of the Imperial Palace, and even Blood Master, the highest-ranking member of the Blade God's 6 martial clan, totally speechless. Air sword. To reach a level where one could actually use an air sword, it was something that even Ranyang, who had lived for many years, had witnessed only once. However, even that hadn't reached the level that Chen Yoan was displaying. Chen Yoan then warned the shocked women with a calm voice. Don't you dare disappoint me. Whoosh. The 12 air swords around Chen Yoan slowly moved ahead and split into two, with 6 swords being directed at each woman. It'll be dangerous for me to act now. Ranyang had lived for nearly 200 years, but had never seen anything like this. The intensity of the energy in each sword was enough to render any of their attacks useless. Chen Yoan spoke to himself. Panel. Activating the panel remote control function on the 12 air swords. Beep 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 beep. Along with Nano's response, the 12 red lights in the augmented reality aimed at the 2 women appeared. On the screen, the swords on the left were pointing towards the woman on the right and vice versa, making it cross-shaped. This isn't the time to be shocked. The eyes of the 2 women, who were previously shocked, turned serious after they came back to their senses. They were amazed at seeing Chen Yoan, someone who had reached the perfect Supreme Master level, perform such skills, but they knew that if they didn't act, they would meet their doom. The women might look young, but they were both veterans in war. Think calmly. Bloodmaster narrowed her eyes and looked at the 6 air swords aimed at her. It was a shocking scene and she knew that it was impossible to deal with them head-on. She, who had reached the Supreme Master level, could defend against air swords, but she could at most only handle 3 of them with accurate precision. Even a master of Qigong wouldn't be able to handle 6 air swords. No matter how much of a master this man is, there is no way he can handle all 12 of them with precision. Moreover, just using the air sword would consume a tremendous amount of internal energy. That meant that the battle depended on time. If the Flame Woman and Bloodmaster managed to defend against at least 3 air swords each, victory would be theirs. It's a simple plan, that isn't based on attack, but it's the best we've got. Ranyang too had come to a similar conclusion. Although the man possessed monster-like ability, there was no way he could handle all 12 air swords. Although we're enemies, I just need to come to a truce with that bitch, Ranyang thought as she glanced at Bloodmaster. The question was how long would they be able to hold their ground, and would they be able to kill the monster that stood before them? Nice. Wing. The flame spheres moved around from Ranyang to where Chen Yoan stood. Since there were 12 air swords, she had to deal with 6 of them and she was capable enough to do it. However, things don't always go as planned. Chuck. Chen Yoan, as if waiting for the right moment, released the 12 air swords towards them. As the swords shot out, the blue trails left by them remained in the air, showing the trajectories of the 12 swords. Swoosh! It was a spectacular sight as the swords rapidly approached the women. It's coming! Ranyang was ready and waiting for the attack as 6 air swords came towards her. The flame spheres, which were floating in the air, quickly flew towards the air swords, as if they were anti-ballistic missiles in the shape of spheres. SHHHHHHHHH. The reason she had launched the flame spheres was to intercept the air swords and cause an explosion, destroying them in the process. And as she intended, the flame spheres, traveling 2 at a time, flew towards the air sword and attempted to collide with them. However, something unexpected happened. How is that possible? Slash. 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 Bang. 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 As shocking as it was, the flying swords tore through the flame spheres. As if the swords were being controlled manually, they gently cut the flame spheres to avoid explosions. Is he really controlling all of them? Ranyang's eyes trembled in shock and fear. If he really could control all of them, then it meant that she was dealing with 6 individual monster swords. Shit. Ranyang struck her fist at the ground, in an attempt to counter the incoming air sword. Bang! With a crack in the ground, red lava began to flow out, and soon, a pillar of flame soared. Hing! Crackle! Thanks to the soaring pillar of flame, the air sword attempting to kill her was blocked. The pillar of flame had actually turned into an iron wall, which managed to shield her from danger. Even if it is an air sword, it is still made of energy. This pillar of flame is so strong that even the strongest sword is unable to penetrate it. There was no need to deal with the swords one after another. After living for 200 years, her experience was incomparable to that of the other 2. Crackle. Crackle. Wing. The air swords tried to go through the pillar of flames, but they were blocked. The corners of Ranyang's lips went up. As expected, the air swords were only capable of stabbing and cutting. If this is it, what good can it hug? Swoosh. The air swords, which couldn't penetrate the pillar of flame, began to spread away from the pillar. At that moment, of the 6 air swords, 3 of them executed the sword force of the heavenly demon and the other 3 used the 24 demon swords. Suddenly, the air swords surrounding the pillar of flame began emitting different types of chi. All of them were different swords. The 24 demon swords and the sword force of heavenly demon were said to be the strongest skills in the demonic cult. What? No way. Ranyang couldn't hide her shock as she saw the scene unfold in front of her. This monster was using different techniques to make sure that the swords were used to their maximum. Chhhhh. In an instant, the two great skills of the demonic cult rushed towards the pillar of flame. And the situation changed when the 6 swords of different natures collided with it. The pillar of flame began to waver and gaps soon appeared on it. The moment the gaps started appearing, 2 swords went through them and rushed for Ranyang, who was hiding behind the pillar. He's a monster. But does he think I'll let myself get hit? Wing. Ranyang urgently reacted as flames burst forth from both her hands, and it wasn't just the flames. Her method of using the flames had changed, unlike the soaring flames from before. This time, the flames held some softness. She was holding on to the flames as if it was a delicate flower that was blooming. Cha, 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 clang. Sparks flew in all directions as her technique and the air swords clashed together. However, Ranyang's eyes suddenly caught something, while she was focusing on blocking the swords. What is this sword? Unlike Ranyang, who was trying her best to block the swords, Blood Master on the other side was facing attacks from 6 air swords and tried her best to prevent herself from getting hit with her own swordsmanship. Clang. Cha, 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 clang. As a skilled master, she managed to counter the air swords which were moving at intervals, and with each collision, sparks flew. As long as you are using the air sword, you'll never be able to enter the gaps and hit us. The Blood Master shouted with confidence. The sword she wielding in her right hand moved so fast that it left an afterimage that was visible to the naked eye. However, if the air swords were only stabbing and slashing, this method would have worked. What? The air swords, which had previously only been stabbing, suddenly started to move differently. The Blood Master couldn't help but stay still for a moment. Shhhh. Ugh. How can that be? While in shock, the 6 air swords began to use different techniques. As if the 6 swords were working together, each sword displayed a unique technique that complemented the other swords. It can't be. The Blood Master was so confused and shocked that she went speechless. Each of the 6 air swords had unique movements because Chen Yoan was controlling them. If he was suddenly going to use 6 different kinds of swords, then the result of a 1-on-1 battle was extremely obvious. Cha, 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 ugh. Using her force chi, she began using a new formation, only to get hit by a sword. She had already jumped back 2 feet, but the force of the sword was so strong that she was pushed 10 steps further. Swoosh. Not giving her any time to breathe, each of the 6 swords moved ahead with no signs of stopping. Each sword looked invincible in her eyes. Why? Because each sword was displaying absolute perfection. What? Why does this swordsmanship seem familiar? Her eyes shook as she tried her best to stop the swords from hitting her. At first, she was only shocked by Chen Yoan's control over the air swords, but the more she saw the movements of the sword, the more familiar it felt. This swordsmanship is... It couldn't be wrong. The sword chi, which the air swords were emitting, resembled the technique that the old man had used to prevent the Blade God of Blade God's 6 martial clan from moving ahead in Qilin. Moreover, unlike that old man's sword chi, which was completely unstable, this was the complete opposite. That old man had identified himself as the lord of the demonic cult, which caused Blood Master to realize something. Demonic cult. This man is from the demonic cult. At last, she managed to find out the identity of the guard in golden armor. From what she knew, there was only one person who could use such a technique. Long hair and pale white face. It was similar to what the remnants of the spies who had been planted in the demonic cult had told her. Chen Yoan. It must be Chen Yoan, the current lord of the demonic cult. The man who had caused their plans go to waste numerous times. Blood Master bit down hard on her lip. She was even more shocked after learning his true identity. If the plan had to go smoothly, then the lord of the demonic cult had to be in the cult. This would also allow them to proceed with their plan in the imperial palace, without any trouble. Even if he wasn't there, how did a person who should have been preparing for a festival appear in the imperial palace? Clang, clang, clang. However, at that moment it wasn't that important. If the person in front of her really was the lord of the demonic cult, then the situation had changed. She had to inform that person that the plan had gone wrong and then get punished for not following it through. However, it was impossible to do both of them. I need to do something about this. Damn it. She would die if she made the wrong decision. She thought that she would only have to hold on until the other woman died, but she had never imagined that they would be in such huge trouble. And it was then? Yuk. She felt something behind her ear, as she glanced sideways to see what it was. A flame soared high as she was pushed towards the pond, which was filled with hot water. When did I get this far? She hadn't even realized that she'd been pushed back by the 6 air swords and their endless attacks. Marks on the ground showed that she'd been pushed back by more than 20 steps. Wing. Cha. 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 Thanks to getting pushed back, she could see the image of Ranyang competing with the other swords. It was violent. The surrounding area was completely devastated by the flames and many sword marks were made on the ground. She could see Ranyang in clear distress. If this goes on, we'll fall out of exhaustion before that man runs out of energy. She wondered what she could do. How could she overcome the hopeless situation? Chiik. Arg. It was difficult to hold her balance as swords kept pushing her back because she was too concentrated on overcoming the situation. Shit. I came all this way for the treasure, shit. It was then that an idea popped into her mind. The blood of the Qilin was in the pond behind her. My situation isn't good. I have no other choice but to take a gamble. She had no idea what effects the Qilin's blood would have on her, but she was so desperate that she was willing to gamble it all. At least with the Qilin's blood, she would experience an increase in her chi. It was a risk worth taking. HAA. Bloodmaster was getting excited as she quickly grabbed onto the sword in her hands and then slammed it into the ground. The formation she had just used had been passed on to her by that person very recently. Bang! At that moment, the sword split into 8 branches, and just like the air swords, it divided into 8 afterimages. It was the 8 swords of the blade god. Cha, 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 cha. The afterimage of the 8 swords spread out in an instant and created a devastating force pushing out the air swords which were coming at her. This is it. At last. She had managed to create a gap with her skills. Without wasting any time, she tried to use the new technique to gain some time. However, at that exact moment, Chuk, Kayawak. Just when she was about to turn, something cold passed through her right arm. She had definitely pushed away the air swords, so what had just arrived next to her? Chuk. Ah, my arm. The coldness she had felt a moment before was due to her arm being cut off. Her arm, which was still holding onto the sword, fell onto the hot ground. Ugh. How is that possible? She could not understand anything. She lifted her head with an incomprehensible expression, and shockingly, Chen Yoan was in front of her eyes. Did you think I would let you do what you were planning? How did you do that? The Blood Master was too shocked to speak. To deal with 12 air swords would require extreme concentration, so he shouldn't be able to move even a single step, but he done exactly that. How? Swoosh. No. She was shocked, but at one point, the 6 air swords which she had temporarily blocked flew around Chen Yoan and surrounded her. It had become a truly desperate situation. This can't be possible. He isn't supposed to be able to move whilst using so many air swords. It wasn't one single air sword, it was 12 air swords. Of course, they didn't know that Nano was assisting Chen Yoan. Yo, are you a monster? No matter how much she thought about it, Chen Yoan's skills were beyond what humans could achieve. Even if the best of men trained, such results would still be considered a myth, something they could never achieve. However, Chen Yoan was able to do it. She bit her lips trying hard to bear with the pain. What displeased her more was that she was acting out of despair and not fear. Chen Yoan, who had cut off her right arm however, was extremely calm. To cut off my right arm. Although the right arm was cut off, it was still possible for her to use the sword with her left hand, since she was extremely skilled. Furthermore, he was right in front of her. She carefully thought of a way to kill the man with her left hand as she gathered energy to her hand. Tuck. Ah. Before she could even gather the energy, her left arm also fell off. Her scream would have torn off the eardrums of others. As her only remaining arm got cut off, Chen Yoan spoke heartlessly to the woman who was in pain and confusion. Don't say I didn't warn you, Ku. HAA. Ha. She thought she could let loose, but that had turned out to be a blundering mistake. Chen Yoan had gained experience after confronting strong enemies in the past. One of the things he had learnt was to never relax until the enemy was dead. This rule of his usually made Chen Yoan's opponents think that he had neither blood nor tears. My arm. Kia. With her both arms cut off, it was safe to assume that recovery was impossible for her. This truth only made her feel even more miserable and painful. The physical pain didn't last long. With an anxious voice and pale face, she shouted. HAA. The person who reached the perfect Supreme Master level is so scared of a woman that would cut her arms off? How funny is that? With a cold voice, Chen Yoan responded. You aren't a woman when you have a weapon, and when desperate, you deem yourself as a woman? What? You? How dare you? Ah, D. She was so upset that she forgot about her lost arms and grunted through her teeth like a mad dog. You need to die, cha, 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 quack. The 6 air swords that surrounded her stabbed into her body from all sides. As she got pierced by the swords, she looked like a hedgehog with swords piercing out through the back of her body. She fell to the ground, with her gaze full of hatred.